Welcome back to the channel. My name's Brian Kingsbury. Today we got a fun article. It's titled 12 Bands with Animal Names, Most Who Had Huge Hits and Some Who Just Disappeared. At number 1 on today's list is Iron Butterfly, the psychedelic rockers who got stuck in a 17-minute loop, released in 1968. If you're around in the late 60s, you definitely remember In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida. If you weren't, you probably still heard its hypnotic organ intro in a movie, TV show, or even an old vinyl shop. Iron Butterfly gave us one of the most legendary one-hit wonders in rock history, except it wasn't just a song. It was an experience, clocking in at an epic 17 minutes on the album, but trimmed down for radio. This track had everything: eerie vocals, haunting keyboard melodies, and a drum solo that made every aspiring drummer want to practice for hours. But after In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida took over the charts in 1968, Iron Butterfly struggled to keep the momentum going. They released more albums, but none of them came close to the magic of their signature song. As the 70s rolled in and rock music evolved, their heavy, slow-burning psychedelia started feeling dated. By the mid-70s, Iron Butterfly faded into obscurity, only popping up occasionally for nostalgia-fueled reunions. Still, if you hear those first few notes in In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, it's like stepping right back into the hazy, experimental days of late 60s rock. At number 2 on today's list is Three Dog Night, the band that made everyone sing Joy to the World, released in 1971. You might not know the name of Three Dog Night, but you absolutely know their biggest hit. Jeremiah was a bullfrog. That opening line from Joy to the World is one of the most instantly recognizable lyrics in music history. The song was pure joy, loud, carefree, and impossible not to sing along to. It hit number 1 in 1971 and became an anthem for parties, road trips, and just about any moment that needed a burst of fun. What's surprising is that Three Dog Night actually had several hits, but none reached the cultural level of Joy to the World. By the late 70s, their sound started to feel out of step with the shifting rock landscape. Disco, punk, and more experimental rock acts took over, and Three Dog Night quietly disappeared from the mainstream. They kept performing in various reunion lineups over the years, but their legacy will be always tied to that one infectious, goofy song about a bullfrog named Jeremiah. At number 3 on today's list is Wild Cherry, the funky white boys who played that funky music, released in 1976. If you've ever been on a dance floor at a wedding, a club, or even just a random house party, you've probably heard Play That Funky Music. It's one of the most enduring funk rock tracks of all time, but the band behind it, Wild Cherry, is mostly forgotten. The song was born out of frustration. Lead singer Rob Parisi was tired of hearing people at their shows yell, "Play that funky music, white boy." Instead of getting annoyed, he turned the phrase into a song, and the rest is history. Play That Funky Music shot to number 1 in 1976 and became an instant classic, but Wild Cherry never found that level of success again. Their follow-up singles barely made a dent in the charts, and by the end of the decade, they had completely vanished. The band broke up, leaving behind one song that continues to get people dancing decades later. If you ever hear it at a party, you can't help but move. Just don't expect anyone to remember who actually sang it. At number 4 on today's list is the Flying Lizards, the band that made Money Sound So Weird, released in 1979. The Flying Lizards were as strange as their name suggests, and their one big hit was even stranger. Their cover of Money, That's What I Want, was unlike anything else on the radio in 1979. Instead of the usual soulful, bluesy delivery, the band stripped the song down to its bare bones and added robotic monotone vocals and an offbeat arrangement. It was minimalist, avant-garde, and yet somehow incredibly catchy. Despite its oddness, Money became a surprise hit, reaching number 5 in the UK and cracking the Billboard charts in the US, but the Flying Lizards were never meant to be a mainstream band. They leaned heavily into experimental artsy music that never had mass appeal. After their brief moment in the spotlight, they faded back into obscurity, becoming more of a cult favorite for music nerds than a household name. But if you ever want to hear one of the strangest top 40 hits of all time, Money is still as bizarre and fascinating as ever. At number 5 on today's list is the Stray Cats, the rockabilly revival that didn't last, released in 1982. In the early 80s, when new wave and synth pop ruled the airwaves, Stray Cats showed up with something completely different, rockabilly. Their hit song Stray Cat Strut was the throwback to the 1950s, full of slicked back hair, upright bass slaps, and that unmistakable old school swagger. It was fresh and nostalgic at the same time, and for a moment it looked like Stray Cats were going to bring rockabilly back in a big way. But the revival didn't last. While Stray Cats Strut and Rock This Town got plenty of airplay, the band struggled to evolve their sound. By the mid-80s, pop music had moved on, and the Stray Cats never quite found their footing again. They disbanded, reunited, disbanded again, and eventually became a nostalgic act for fans who still love that rockabilly energy. Their influence is undeniable. Just don't expect them to hear them mentioned in the same breath as the decade's biggest rock legends. At number 6 on today's list is the Turtles, the band that made everyone happy with Happy Together, released in 1967. Few songs capture the feeling of young love as perfectly as Happy Together. It's a song so infectious, so pure, it's in its joy that it's almost impossible to hear it without smiling. The Turtles, with their sunny harmonies and playful style, became instant stars when the song hit number 1 in 1967. It was a moment of pure pop perfection, catchy, romantic, and timeless. But despite their success with Happy Together, the Turtles never managed to recreate that magic. They released other songs, but none came close to the impact of their biggest hit. By the early 70s, the band members moved on to different projects, and the Turtles faded into nostalgia. Still, if you hear Happy Together today, it's a reminder of a simpler time when all you needed for a great song was a sweet melody and a chorus that made you want to sing at the top of your lungs. At number 7 on today's list is A Flock of Seagulls, the band that gave us I Ran and the most 80s hair ever, released in 1982. When you think of the early 80s, chances are you picture neon lights, synthesizers, and gravity-defying hairstyles. Enter A Flock of Seagulls, the band that delivered all of the above in one unforgettable package. Their 1982 hit I Ran So Far Away was the ultimate new wave anthem, moody, atmospheric, and packed with shimmering synths that made you feel like you were running through a sci-fi dream. The song became an instant classic, blasting from radios and MTV screens, while lead singer Mike Score's bizarrely sculpted hair became the stuff of legend. Like many bands riding the MTV wave, A Flock of Seagulls found it hard to maintain their momentum. Their follow-up singles, Wishing and Space Age Love Song, were solid but never reached the same heights. By the mid-80s, they were overshadowed by bigger new wave acts like Duran Duran and The Cure. As their popularity faded, the band splintered, and Mike Score kept the name alive with different lineups over the years. Today, I Ran still pops up in nostalgic throwback playlists, but A Flock of Seagulls remains a classic case of a band that soared high, then disappeared into the fog of time. At number 8 on today's list is White Lion, the hair metal band that roared and then went silent, released in 1987. Hair metal ruled the late 80s, and White Lion was one of the many bands trying to ride that wave. Unlike some of their peers, they leaned more toward emotional, melodic rock rather than full-throttle party anthems. Their biggest hit, When the Children Cry, was a soft, haunting ballad that struck a chord with listeners years in 1987. It was a departure from the flashy, over-the-top rock that defined the era, and it paid off, earning them a top 10 spot on the Billboard charts. But despite their momentum in the spotlight, White Lion never quite fit in with the glam metal giants like Bon Jovi or Motley Crue. They had talent, but their style wasn't wildly enough to keep up with the excess of the era. By the 90s, grunge had arrived, and bands like White Lion were seen as relics of a fading genre. They quietly disbanded in 1992, leaving behind a handful of songs that still get played on classic rock radio, but never quite cementing themselves as one of the greats. At number 9 on today's list is Fastball, the late 90s band that had us all asking, where were they going? Released in 1998, Fastball had one of those songs that came out of nowhere and suddenly became inescapable. The Way hit the airwaves in 1998, and for a while it felt like everyone was singing along. The song had a mysterious, almost dreamlike quality, telling the story of a couple who simply vanished one day, leaving behind only questions. It was catchy, a little eerie, and perfectly suited for the late 90s alternative rock scene. But while The Way was a massive hit, Fastball struggled to find another song that resonated the same way. They had other singles, Out of My Head and Fire Escape, but nothing reached the heights of their first breakout. By the early 2000s, the alternative rock landscape had shifted and Fastball faded into obscurity. They've continued making music over the years, but for most people, they'll always be the band that gave us one great song about a road trip that never quite had an ending. At number 10 on today's list is The Tokens, the band behind The Lion Sleeps Tonight, released in 1961. Even if you don't recognize the name The Tokens, you've definitely heard their song. The Lion Sleeps Tonight is one of the most famous songs of all time thanks to its infectious Wimawe chorus and its association with everything from The Lion King to barbershop quartets. When the song was released in 1961, it became an instant hit, reaching number 1 on the Billboard charts and cementing The Tokens as doo-wop stars. But after The Lion Sleeps Tonight, The Tokens struggled to produce another song that made the same impact. They had minor successes, but nothing came close to their one timeless hit. Over the years, the song itself has outlived the band, getting covered by countless artists and showing up in movies, commercials, and TV shows. The Tokens may have faded into history, but their song will live on forever, probably playing in the background of a jungle scene near you. At number 11 on today's list is Kajagoogoo, the band with the most awkward name and short-lived hit, released in 1983. Kajagoogoo might have had the most bizarre band name of the 1980s, but for a brief moment they were riding high on the success of Too Shy. The song was peak 80s, synth-heavy, catchy, and full of that dreamy, mysterious new wave energy. It became a huge hit in 1983, rocketing up the charts and making them instant stars in the UK and beyond. But then, classic band drama struck. Lead singer Lamal was fired from the band right after the big success, and without his signature voice and charm, Kajagoogoo quickly lost momentum. They tried to carry on, but their follow-up singles never hit the same way, and by the mid-80s they had quietly faded into obscurity. While Lamal had some solo success thanks to the Neverending Story theme song, the band itself never recovered. These days, Too Shy still pops up on the 80s playlists, but Kajagoogoo remains a textbook example of how one song can launch a band to stardom and then just as quickly send them back into the shadows. And finally, the last band on today's list at number 12 is Men Without Hats, the band that let us dance if we want to, released in 1982. If you were alive in the early 80s, you definitely heard the Safety Dance. Even if you weren't, you probably seen the bizarre medieval-themed music video at some point. Men Without Hats delivered one of the most fun and weirdly rebellious songs of the era, with a chorus that practically begged you to get up and move. The song was about freedom and the right to dance however you wanted without being judged. And for one glorious moment in 1982, that message resonated with the world. But once the safety dance started to fade from the charts, Men Without Hats struggled to keep their momentum going. They released other songs, but none of them have the same quirky charm and mainstream appeal. By the late 80s, they had faded into obscurity, only to resurface occasionally for nostalgic reunions. Still, anytime the safety dance comes on, it's impossible not to smile, and maybe even do a little goofy dance just because you can. Alright, there you have it, 12 bands with animal names, most who had huge hits and some who just disappeared. That's the way it goes sometimes. If you enjoyed today's video, please take a second to like the video and subscribe to the channel. There I am, we have 1.81 thousand subscribers and 7.1 thousand videos for you to view. So go on up there and see what we got to watch. Here's a quick look at the last 12 videos to go up to the channel. Look at all those great thumbnails. You know you want to go up there and check some of these videos out. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. When you do that, you ring the notification bell. You ring that bell and you'll be notified every time a new video drops. That way you don't miss out on one. And you can just watch the ones that you want to, the ones that appeal to you. We try to put out 2 to 3 videos every day, so there's always something fun and fresh for you to watch. I thank you for watching this one to the very end. I'm Brian Kingsbury. We'll talk to you on the next one. Bye.